Welcome to another episode of the Lion and the Liverbird podcast. We had spoken last week about wanting something extra to talk about this time around, apart from the Premier League games. And thank you, David Coote. You've given us a lot to talk about today. So, for those who have been living under a rock and don't know what actually happened or who David Coote is one of the top Premier League referees. He's actually also doing some work for UEFA as VAR, also, I think, in a few games in the Nations League. He was in action this past weekend as the referee as Liverpool beat Aston Villa. And lo and behold, a few hours after the game, I believe, or it was on Sunday, we got an incriminating video of David Coote looking absolutely high and plastered, where he basically had a foul-mouthed rant against our former manager, Jurgen Klopp, called him the C word. Also went on to say that Liverpool were basically uh, crap. But he did have some good words for James Milner. He said James Milner is all right for some reason. Now, a lot of things have happened. So initially, a lot of us, when we saw this, we thought this was some AI generated video because that's what happens. And I believed that for a while. But then, you saw a lot of the bigger football accounts start sharing this, and it really caught steam during this international break. So David Coote first came out and said that this video isn't real. Then he accepted that yeah, this video is real, but he cannot remember when it took place. Obviously, Rohit has also said it that he looked very high, so he probably would not remember what he said. And now he has been suspended. There is a inquiry taking place, but it seems like he might not get to referee for a while. There are a lot of things that I will bring up in this discussion. But Rohit, your first thoughts on this after this video came out?
Well, when I first saw this video, I'm like, oh man, this guy got betrayed by whoever's taking the video. Because even in the video, he says this can never come out, right?
Mhm.
And the guy who's taking the video says, yes, this will never come out. But guess what? People backstab you, right? But it's a very interesting topic here, right? We talk about human biases, and it's been talked about across various fields, and policing and politics and all of these things. And football and referees are no different, right? Everybody has their biases. Everybody, hates people or likes people. In this case, David Coote hates Klopp, loves Milner, right? But the question should be, what should the Premier League do about it, and what should the match officials do about it, right? There should be better vetting of who has what kind of bias against whom, right? And you should ensure that those things are actually out in public. Nobody would have said anything if David Coote, felt that Klopp was a C word, but he was never ever officiating a Liverpool match, or he was never a VAR, right? It would have been fine because Klopp has, screamed at referees, shouted at referees. That's an opinion one can have, but I think that these kind of things should be kind of made transparent, right? Because I remember, last season, Nottingham Forest had a similar complaint, right, about a VAR. They said that, the VAR official was a fan of a rival club, and that's why his judgment will be clouded, which seemed like a reasonable argument to me. But the Premier League Referees Association came out against that, and they've basically now, I think, levied some sort of fine on Nottingham Forest. So none of this obfuscating and making things opaque help. I think transparency is the way to go about it. You first admit that people do have biases. What can you do about it? What can you do so that these biases don't interfere in matches, right? That's my opinion.
I was reading about Coote, and apparently it says that he's a Notts County fan, I believe. I'm not sure. So
Mhm.
that's a little strange because a lot of people have said he's a Manchester United fan. One thing is for sure that he has made quite a few blunders. It's not just Liverpool.
Mhm.
He's really taken it out. I think he was also the referee or the VAR in I can't remember. It was a Community Shield, I think, at the start of the season, and there was a huge handball call. So Liverpool fans are obviously up in arms because he's obviously called out the club and the manager, and he has been on the wrong side of a lot of questionable decisions. Starting way back when Virgil van Dijk got injured, the first his ACL when Jordan Pickford came flying and hitting him. VAR, I think it was David Coote. Odegaard's handball at Anfield last season, where he's playing basketball in the penalty box
Yeah.
again. That was
Mhm.
Coote. And this just keeps
Yeah.
adding and adding more. I don't know, more. What's the word I'm looking for? I think more credence
Yeah,
that
and
would,
the
yeah,
murkies the water even more, right? Yeah, when you
correct.
look back and you think, oh, okay, what kind of motivations did this guy have, and so on and so forth.
So he was
Yep.
also on the end of a terrible decision at the weekend, where in the first goal for Liverpool, Salah is on through, and he's hauled down as the last man, and you can see in the video, Kuth is waving his hands and saying no foul, which is insane because it's as slam dunk a foul as you would see. Fortunately, Darwin
Oh
Núñez
man.
scored the goal from a very tight angle. But Liverpool have been on the end of a lot of poor decisions. You remember the ghost goal that wasn't given, Luis Diaz. It wasn't Coote, obviously, but Jeremy Doku giving a flying kick to McAllister in the penalty box against Man City last season. Sadio Mane is offside in the same game against Everton where Virgil van Dijk got injured. David Coote spent like 10 minutes trying to prove that Mane was offside. So there's a lot going on about it. Now, interestingly, a lot of things have come up. So the first time this fallout between Coote and Klopp took place was in the game against Burnley during the COVID era. It was a 1-1 draw. Andy Robertson had also come out and said a lot of things about Coote, and Coote was also obviously very upset with what Klopp had said. But apparently, Coote did not referee a Liverpool game for 4 years after that, which is interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
He wasn't on
That makes
VAR.
actually sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he wasn't on VAR duty for us for also 3 years. So maybe there
Mhm.
is some justification or truth, that he did not like Liverpool. Maybe he had become a little bit more, what which is sensible with his decision making, and that's why they allowed him to
Mhm.
take officiate Liverpool matches. But it does seem that he's in a lot of trouble. I personally don't think that he will be able to referee a top flight match anymore. I know it's a little excessive because he said this about Liverpool, right? But that means he should not technically then also referee Everton games. He shouldn't referee Manchester United games, Man City games, and any club basically that's fighting with Liverpool for a position because his refereeing can lead to major repercussions. So it's difficult for him. It's difficult for PGMOL because they've been trying to save their blushes with a lot of refereeing blunders. I think Howard Webb is the first person who should be kicked out of the job because he himself isn't fit for this. And you've already
Mhm.
had a lot of former referees come out and support Coote and say, this is the first time something like this has happened. We don't know what's going to happen. So I just want to take it down another route. Had Jurgen Klopp come out or was caught on a camera, even in his home, said that this referee is a C-word and all the referees are shit basically, he would have been fined, he would have been suspended, maybe even more. So, and the other thing is that maybe a manager can say stuff like this because he's representing a club, whereas as a referee you're supposed to be impartial, you're supposed to see everything down the middle. Now if you have that kind of a bias in your head before even stepping onto the pitch, obviously as you said earlier, it will affect the decisions that you make. So I think it's the end for David Coote, at least in England.
Yeah, I don't see him refereeing any top level matches, at least in, next 3, 4 years, right? Maybe after that he's got rehabilitated. What's interesting to me is how does PGMOL handle this, right? Do they brush it under the carpet, brush it under the rug, or do they shine a light on it and say that, hey, we do have a problem here. There are biases in human beings and referees, and this is what we are going to do about it. We're going to be upfront about it because now, basically, every team is going to say, hey, this referee took a bad decision against us because he must have had some biases against us, right? So he's actually put, I don't know, I feel bad for the other referees, whatever decisions they take, and things are going to be wrong sometimes, right? They come under the scanner now. Which is very interesting now I think about it. In the modern day and age, right? Everybody has a cell phone. You're having like a drink with your friend or something, you're a little high, and then you say something and somebody records it and puts it out there. I don't know what's the way around it, right? Like these referees need to make sure that there are no cell phones in the room when they're having a pint with their friends or something. It's crazy. But let's see. Knowing PGMOL, they won't do the right thing here. They'll probably suspend him and they'll say, "Oh, there are no biases anywhere else." So that was the only instance. But let's see what happens.
Yeah, so regarding that point about the cell phones, this is not the first time the referees have fallen into trouble. I believe a couple of years ago they had all gone for a trip to Indonesia without their
Mhm.
misses, and they were all pictured with exotic dancers. And
Okay.
that's putting it in mild terms. They're not exotic dancers,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
that's one
Yeah.
thing. And I completely agree with you. PGMOL will completely just put this under the rug. They'll say there's nothing wrong with this. It's just a
Mm.
one-off. They'll also obviously use the fact that, this was from the heat of the moment. Jurgen Klopp was maybe the instigator. That's why he said this, and he was drunk, he was high. It's not his fault completely. The worrying thing for me is that, almost every single referee in the Premier League is not up to scratch. If we take out a list
Hmm.
of performances, you've got Paul Tierney, you've got Michael Oliver, you've got, I think, Darren England, who was VAR. I can name them all, and we'll all say that, they've made terrible
They're all
decisions.
bad.
Yeah, against all the clubs. I'm not just saying Liverpool.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to say because we've had a catalogue of errors, but obviously the same things happen to
Yeah.
Chelsea, same things happen to Tottenham, to City, to United, not to City, sorry, I won't say City, to United, to Arsenal at times. I think the only right solution is either we have referees who support teams that are from non-league football, like they're actually referees first and not football supporters first, like from the Premier League or the Championship, which is difficult. The other thing to do is obviously get foreign referees in. I think England has the biggest problem with their referees. You don't see such issues ever coming out from, we've said this so many times, from France, from Italy, from Germany. Uh,
I think there are though, because I think we don't really pay that much attention. I think at least this kind of bias is universal. The number of errors, I agree with you, right? But the bias factor is there. Because I remember, didn't this happen in Serie A as well? Like referees were favoring Juventus, and there's
oh,
a
yeah.
whole kind of corrupt stuff going on there.
But that wasn't swept under the rug, right? Juventus were relegated. They were sent to, I think, Serie B, 20-point deduction. They lost the titles. We're seeing the FA or the Premier League wait for these 115 charges. They'll probably end up doing nothing to Manchester City. So I think the only solution is getting foreign referees in. And as for this issue, when the FA do come up with a solution or the PGMOL, whatever happens, I think there'll be a 15-point deduction for Everton. So that's like the only thing that's going to be happening. Well, now we got to get back to football terms. I think we need to talk about the big game of the weekend: Arsenal versus Chelsea, a London derby. A lot riding on it. Arsenal came in struggling after I think 2 or 3 defeats on the bounce. Chelsea, they'd beaten Noah, I think, what, 7-8-0. But this was always going to be a real test of their title credentials or maybe even a top four finish. Arsenal took the lead through a Gabriel Martinelli goal. I think Sanchez should have done better at the near
I think
post.
every match we say that Sanchez
Yeah.
should have done.
And but then we,
Uh,
we got an amazing goal from Pedro Neto. He got the ball, I think,
yeah.
a few yards outside the box, drove and
Mhm.
smashed it in. Uh, I could see that a lot of the Arsenal players were raising their hands. They wanted somebody to close him down, but Neto's really shining now for Chelsea. And then the match kind of turned into a back and forth game. But Arsenal had the best chance right at the end. I'm not sure if Saliba was offside, but he put in a beautiful ball in, and I don't know how Trossard managed to miss hitting the target. Kai Havertz was there at the back end; he could have also put it in. But I think a 1-1 draw was a fair result. What do you think?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, right? 1-1 draw was a fair result. I was a little disappointed in the way Chelsea approached the game. It was a little cagey. It was a little, kind of being a little bit too careful in your shell. But I think one big issue there was that Palmer was not on the top of his game because he had an injury he was coming back from. He clearly wasn't at his best, right? And the other issue in that particular game was the fact that there was a big physical mismatch between Arsenal and Chelsea. If you look at their starting lineup, they had their four centre backs, they had Partey, they had Rice, and Chelsea didn't really have that physicality to match them. I think that's why they probably stayed in the shell a little bit. But it was kind of funny to me that Havertz, was bullied by the Chelsea players all throughout the match, right? Starting from Cucurella to like Caicedo to Reece James when he came on, and Havertz tried to, score a sneaky goal, which we kind of got saved from because of an offside decision. But it was overall a very, very cagey game. Chelsea do sit third, but I think only 3 points separate third from 11th or something like that. That's
Insane.
insane,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so that gives you a false sense of security, which is actually not true. Chelsea last couple of games have been lackluster. But I think you've got to give Maresca time, right? This is not an ideal squad. There are holes in the squad. We've talked about how Enzo doesn't start because he can't really play with Caicedo, but with Lavia and Caicedo, you don't have that impetus going forward, the creativity, and the goal that we did score. Enzo did provide a very beautiful pass into Neto that created the space for him, right? So there you saw the positive from Enzo, but he can't start because of his physicality, right? So you got to give Maresca time. We're doing okay, I would say. The third position on the table kind of belies everything. But overall, again, I think negative play from both the teams in a way.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up something about Palmer. We've seen him do so well. He was, I think, one of the best players, if not the best player last season, especially during the second half. Does he go missing in the big games? Because there's something that I've seen that he maybe doesn't perform to his best abilities when he's up against the top six opponent. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, last two games against Man United and against Arsenal, he hasn't been good, but I think it's mostly been an injury-related issue. And the other thing is he's still very, very young, right? I think 21, 22 years old, right? He will go missing, right? At that age, you can't expect him to be performing. I mean, just to give you the example of Saka in this game, right? Kukurea, who was the man of the
Yeah,
match, had him locked down, right? Zero assists, zero critical passes, zero goals, basically zero on all the fronts. Does that mean Saka is not a good player? No, that means Kukurea did a great job on him. So Palmer, of course, he has been blowing a little cold last two games, but only time will tell. How he performs against some of the bigger teams. But again, this team needs a lot of time. This team needs time to gel. But you bring up a good point. Again, we have another international break now, so he'll get time to recover from his injuries, and I think we have a favorable run of fixtures coming up after the break. So we'll see how he does.
right. We also need to talk about the team that's lying second in the Premier League now. That's Manchester City. 4 points ahead of the chasing pack, but another defeat in the Premier League. That's four defeats in a row under Pep Guardiola. I believe that's the first time something like this has happened. They were beaten by Brighton, and we did say that Brighton could be a
Yeah.
tough game for them, and it was a tale of two halves. So City were actually very good in the first half; they had the chances, but Brighton felt like a completely different team in the second, and they scored two goals. They got the winner. Uh, we've seen City struggle this season. Fulham was one of those games. I think against Southampton they didn't do so well. Also, they just got one goal. I still can't pinpoint what's so wrong with City because they still have those great players. Erling Haaland's not getting as many goals as he should. Bernardo Silva is still there. Kevin De Bruyne's returned. Phil Foden, I think, is the big problem. I think he isn't clicking as much as he should. And what I like now is that teams are actually going and taking City on. A lot of seasons we've
Mhm.
seen, people give them too much respect. They sit back, they hope to break on the counter. Now there are teams that are going up against them. Obviously, it's a twofold thing. One is obviously teams going up against City and trying to beat them. The other thing is the teams themselves are becoming better. You've got some really good managers, and Brighton's got a good
Absolutely.
manager. Bournemouth's got a good manager. West Ham does have a good manager. He just needs time to click. Aston Villa has a very good manager. So uh, it's not all rosy at one side of Manchester.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Manchester United's decline has coincided with all of these
Manchester,
other teams
Manchester
improving.
City
Ma- Manchester City, sorry,
so
apologies.
used
Manchester
to
City's
so used to berating United.
Yeah, Man United is actually doing well now. But Man
Yeah.
City's decline has coincided with all these other teams doing well, right? And we've talked about this. Rodri being out hurts them defensively a lot. I think both of the goals that they conceded kind of went right through their center, right? Joao Pedro's first goal and I think the second goal as well. So there are these defensive frailties, which also used to be there in the last season as well. If you remember, there were defensive frailties. And the main thing I see is Pep is kind of at the end of his tenure. You can see that, right? He said something in the press conference that you can't have like a domination for like 50 years nonstop. Things will, go through troughs and peaks and all of those things. So I think his tenure is about to end. I know their technical director just left. Right, they're going to get a new technical director, so it's a time of turmoil, a time of change, and this is expected, right? Perfect opportunity to segue into the league leaders and now officially rank favorites to win the league, Liverpool.
Who would have thought that? So yeah, Liverpool are on
Yeah.
top, uh, completely exceeding expectations from the start of the season. I think a top four finish was all that we expected. Only one loss so far. Only one. I think we've only got one draw. Yeah, one draw. That also in the Premier League. We are 100% winning all the games in the Champions League, and we faced a tough opposition this weekend, Aston Villa. And the game, I think, went exactly as people expected. Villa are a little passive when it comes to playing the big teams, and they were that. But interestingly, we didn't take the game to Villa either. So we were actually trying to hit them on the counter, and both of our goals came from corners that Villa had. Mohamed Salah with a great finish for the second goal. And the first goal was a Darwin Nunes finish also. We've spoken about the referee decision. I won't go into that anymore. But this was, supposed to be our tough run. We're facing Arsenal, we're facing Leverkusen, we're facing Brighton twice, and we're facing Villa. And from all those games, we've only drawn once. That's against Arsenal, and we won the other four. So slots got us working. We aren't dominating teams like we used to under Klopp, but then obviously, as with Chelsea and Maresca, this is still a project. There is still a lot of work that Slot can do to improve this team. But again, the most important thing I feel for us is that we are defensively very solid. Attack wins you games, defense wins you titles, and that's what we're seeing with Slot right now. Ibrahima Konate has been a monster this season. Again, at the start of the season, we were talking about, Kwanzaa and Van Dijk should be the partnership. Kwanzaa was unimpressive in a game or two, and Slot once took him out at halftime and put Konate in, and Konate has not looked back. He's been excellent. I'm very pleased that he's not injured because he has an unfortunate habit of picking up niggles and injuries, but all good for us on that end. Our goalkeeping situation also going to be great after November with Allison returning. I think Kelleher could continue. So yeah, all looks great for us right now. What did you think about the match?
Yeah, here's my question to you, right? You're saying you're not dominating, but you clearly are on top of the table, most goals scored, least goals conceded. I mean, what else do you want, right? You don't want to dominate in terms of having 60% possession and be a boring team and not win games, right? I think with the front line that you have, hitting teams on the counter, every time you guys counter, it's like so dangerous, right? It seems like an kind of automatic goal because you have Mo Salah who's so quick and he's so skillful and he's got such amazing vision, right? Every time he gets the ball, you're like, oh shit, the opposition is in trouble. Nunes is playing well, Diaz is banging in goals, Gakpo is banging in goals. You guys have like the perfect combination to hit teams on the counter. And I think I've spoken about this before. It's not like you're getting battered either, right? You're just conceding possession in certain strategic parts of the field so that when you counter, you have a certain advantage. I see a lot of tactical nous from Slot in that. And the other thing is the injury aspect, right? I really think all these modern managers are managing these injuries well. They're using a scientific approach to manage the workload, manage the players, and I'm pretty sure the training regimes are much more advanced than the previous generation of managers. It has to be because just over one season, the same thing is happening with Chelsea. Chelsea's injury record has been much better now. And Liverpool's injury record has been so much better than Klopp. So there definitely is something to do with these modern managers managing these injuries well, using science more.
Yeah, I think that's the thing we've spoken about a lot is that Slot does believe a lot in modern science and all this. He's a proper coach. He has changed the training regime at Liverpool. He's made a few other changes also, like players can stay in their own homes before a home game rather than going to a hotel. Uh, Apart from the physiological part of it, the psychological part of it. And I think what I'm used to, I think a lot of Liverpool fans are taking time to get used to is that, under Klopp used to have those games where you just battered opponents away 5-0, 4-0. You don't see that all the time under Slot. But obviously that makes sense because I think he's a more efficient coach. At least he's getting a more efficient results. You don't get those, crazy heavy metal games where the opposition's attacking you for 50 minutes. We are attacking them for 50 minutes. I think it's a little more calm and composed. It's like a symphony rather than a rock concert. I think it'll still take us a little bit of time. But again, you can't really complain about what Slot has achieved so far. Obviously, we have three-fourths of the season to go. Uh, it all looks good for us. The thing is that once we return from the international break, we should have the likes of Harvey Elliott back. We should have Federico Chiesa back, and we should have Allison
Do
back.
they get into the team? Where do they get in the team?
Elliott's the one that I'm really I'm interested to see because he is a player that's Klopp really liked, and he had become a sort of starter for us last season. He could be the one who plays in Soboslai's position. Right now, we are
But
rotating
Soboslai
between.
isn't starting anyways, right? It's
Correct.
Curtis Jones who's taking over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Curtis Jones is not a number 10. McAllister can play a number 10, and Gravenberch is not a number 10 either. So we are basically trying to force one of our three holding midfielders into that position. Maybe Elliott could be that one person who, breaks through. And that will also give Slot a lot of opportunities to rest and rotate our players. I think with
Mhm.
Chiesa also back, maybe we could give Salah a break, but obviously I don't think he wants a break. He hasn't.
Salah doesn't want a
Salah
break,
doesn't.
bro.
So
Salah will
very.
come punch you in the face if
Yeah.
you want. If you ask him to take a
He'll
break.
punch me if I ask him to
He
even get
gets
subbed.
so mad when he's
Yeah.
substituted in like a dead rubber
Even
game
if he's
also.
substituted in the 89th minute, he's upset. Liverpool are winning
Yeah.
3-0. He's not happy. So it's insane. So this is the interesting thing. Salah has not gone with Egypt during this international break. He's been excused. Maybe contract talks. I don't know, because that's something that we need to look at also. Virgil van Dijk, Salah, and Trent. Who stays and who
So
goes?
Salah is at the end of his contract, or will he still have one more year after
No,
this?
all three at the end.
Oh my God.
So
Oh
in
my God.
December, technically all three could speak. Sorry, in January, all three could speak with foreign clubs for a
Uh-huh.
transfer. So yeah, we need to sort this out before December ends. But let's see who stays and who goes. Liverpool do
Mm.
have some tough fixtures after the break. We start off with Southampton away, but then we've got the two good games. It's Liverpool versus Real Madrid in the Champions League, and then
Mhm.
Liverpool versus Man City a few days later. And then you've got Newcastle, Liverpool, and then Everton, Liverpool. So that's
Mhm.
four games that really are interesting. Real Madrid, given the current situation, I don't know. Liverpool should be able to beat them. City also the same. Newcastle away could be a tough picture, and Everton away. Everton also doing all right, I guess. So it's not easy games, but with Slot there, I'm not really all that worried. Plus, we have a 5 point gap over City. So if we can avoid defeat against City, that'll be great. Uh,
Yeah, I don't see City defeating you guys for sure, and neither do I see Real Madrid defeating you guys. The only tricky fixture there is like Newcastle away. You said
hmm.
right, that might be the only tricky one. Yeah.
We want to end this episode with a couple of teams that are maybe moving in different directions. One is Tottenham. A lot was said about Ange when he started last season, and they were, I think, top of the table or something for a matter of a few days or something. But this season has been a bit of a reality check. 5 wins, 5 losses, 1 draw. They beat City in the EFL Cup, but they're losing games they shouldn't be losing. They again lost at the weekend. They're 10th, 16 points.
Ipswich.
Ipswich,
Yeah.
yeah. That was the first win, like the first win in the Premier League for over 20, 30 years, I think, for
Yeah.
Ipswich.
Yeah.
So Angie is under a lot of pressure. There's this really interesting thing that's come out, about the mentality of Tottenham. I don't know if you read this during the weekend or before that. It was during the 2019 Champions League final. Hugo Lloris came out and said, that Tottenham have this mentality of not winning or something. So before the Champions League final, these guys were given watches. A luxury company gave them watches, and Daniel Levy came in and gave it to them. And uh, Hugo Lloris was aghast, and so were a lot of players because the engraving on the watch said 2019 Champions League finalist. And he's like, "Why are you giving us a
Uh,
finalist thing? You should at least either you wait or you give us this thing that is just a beautiful watch." It's like a smack in the face of the team. Like you've already prepared, you've already thought that reaching the final was a big thing. So I think it's weird for what's happening with Tottenham. They look good some days, they look bad some days. Uh,
yeah. I think that's the big issue here, right? I think they defeated Man City, like you said, they defeated Aston Villa pretty handily, and then they go out and lose to Ipswich, right? At least this time, Ange Postecoglou has come out and taken the blame on himself, right? Last time he said it was the players, but definitely there's blame here on both the sides, right? Ange Postecoglou should be setting up his team a little bit better. You have to be strong to defend in the counter, right? Because all these smaller teams, that's what they'll do. Let's see. Again, they are being Spurs, very Spursy, but the problem is they're doing well against the bigger teams, right? So when they come up against the bigger teams, they'll come up with a good result and then they'll go lose. And they've lost to Crystal Palace as well. I think Crystal Palace's only win has come against Tottenham. Ipswich's only win has come against Tottenham. So these guys are not serious, man. That's what I feel. They're just there for the paycheck. One day they play well, the other day they're like, it's okay, I don't want to win. But no progress, like you said.
Yeah, no progress from last season, which is very strange.
Mhm.
Uh, we need to talk about obviously Manchester United. The Ruud Van Nistelrooy era has come to an end. It ended with a 3-0 win. Ruud, I think, was unbeaten in the few games he was in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that obviously he's not staying at the club. He is leaving. Ruben Amorim is coming in. So a new dawn for Manchester United. Interesting to see what Amorim does in these 2 weeks. Obviously, now this is also a new project. We need to give them time. I hope he doesn't get time, but let's see how he does. It'll be interesting to see how he does once all the players are back.
Yeah, I think Amarim will do pretty well, right? I think he's a good manager. He's got a good track record, and this has clearly shown. The last few games under Road has clearly shown that Man United have a good squad, right? They were just not playing for Ten Hag. I think the future is bright for them as well, which is also good for the league as a whole, right? You have another giant coming back into the fold, and it's going to get even more exciting. So let's see what happens. But good news at least for the Man U fans for now.
Yeah. So that's it for this episode. Do like, share, and subscribe to our content. Ask us questions. We love to hear from you. And let's see what happens to David Coote and if PGMOL get their act together. They won't, but we can always hope.
No.
Yeah.
Answer is no.
Yeah. Until then, next time, bye bye.
Bye-bye.